Hello everybody, Jeremy Dickinson here. Thank you for watching. In this video, I'd like to conclude my discussion of Buddhism. Part 1, I focused on the life of the Buddha leading up to his experience under the Bodhi tree, where he had the great meditative experience that gave him the insights which led to the development of the doctrines of Hinduism, the key doctrines of Hinduism, the Four Noble Truths. In Part 2, I discussed the Four Noble Truths in a bit more detail, and then toward the end I concluded discussing the Eightfold Path, which is the fourth of the Noble Truths. And I had to conclude quickly, so what I wanted to do was pick up there and say just a few concluding things about the life of the Buddha. So we know that the Buddha was Siddhartha Gautama, and that he had this great experience, this transcendent experience, you could say, under the Bodhi tree, where he gained insights into the universe, into the nature of things, if you will. And he became the Buddha. People came to him, disciples came to him looking for his teaching and his guidance. They asked him what he was. Is he an angel? Is he a god? Is he a prophet? And he said, I'm awake. And that's what Buddha means. Buddha means to be awake. And the Buddha is the one who awoke. He's the awakened one. And so he had the insights I discussed in Part 2 of this discussion, and I discussed the Eightfold Path, which concludes his Four Noble Truths in Part 2. I should say that the Four Noble Truths kind of coalesced from the teachings of the Buddha. And he had an important decision to make after realizing and gaining the insights that we find in the Four Noble Truths. Should he seek his release from the suffering, following the Eightfold Path, and seek his salvation, as it were. And the term for salvation in the Buddhist tradition is nirvana. Should he pursue his own nirvana, or should he stay and teach what he learned to others? And we know that the Buddha made the decision to forego his nirvana, his own nirvana, for the sake of other people. And so he decided to teach. He decided to go out and teach people the insights that he gained from his experience under the Bodhi tree. And he found that he would have followers, people who came and listened to him teach, and very quickly he had a following. And the following is a religious following. Sometimes it's referred to as the Sangha. So in Buddhism, oftentimes there's claimed to be three gems. There's the gem of the Buddha, the life of the Buddha, and what happened to the Buddha in that experience he had under the Bodhi tree, which led to his insights. But then there's also Dharma, which are the truths that the Buddha learned, those insights that he learned, that he taught. Dharma is oftentimes translated from the Sanskrit to mean truth or duty. And then there's Sangha. And Sangha is a religious community that the Buddha was connected to after he had his famous experience. And so he had a Sangha, he had a religious community around him, and he had lots of teachings from his experiences. But he didn't just teach from that one experience that he had, foundational though that may have been. He actually would regularly retreat and go away from people so he could meditate further, as it were, recharge and gain further insights. And he would frequently do this, and it gave him a kind of method for teaching and leading the Sangha. So he'd have these meditative retreats frequently, daily, and sometimes for months at a time when he found it necessary. And so in this way, he is like other religious figures in the history of religion. So some of my viewers might be thinking about how Jesus would frequently take religious retreats to pray and to connect with, as he would claim, the Father. The Buddha did very similar things 6 centuries before the birth of Jesus. Now, the Buddha got many tags and many names. One famous one is Sakyamuni, which means the silent sage, because he didn't speak very much. When he spoke very meaningfully, and he spoke with quite a bit of purpose, as you can imagine. Thinking about the Eightfold Path, he was following his very teachings. So he was frequently quite silent. And in fact, there are certain sermons, it's claimed, where he didn't speak at all. So there's famously what's called the flower sermon that the Buddha gave, where it consisted of him holding a flower in front of the Sangha, in front of his disciples, if you will. And there were many around who were expecting him to speak about the flower, maybe give a great lecture on the flower. But instead he said nothing. He just held the flower there. He noticed that one of his disciples there understood the meaning of the silence and holding the flower there. And so that captures why sometimes the Buddha is referred to as Sakyamuni, the silent sage. But he's also referred to as the Tathagata, which means the truth winner. He's someone who sought the truth and he gained the truth. So in a sense, he's a winner with respect to the truth. He's a truth winner. Now, the Buddha also, he has this religious sangha that he's leading in a very effective way through silence and by taking these retreats. That way he comes back with insights, more insights on how to teach properly and get people to understand how it is that they can be led to nirvana, the freedom from the suffering that they're experiencing in this life. So nirvana is the concept, the counterpart concept that to moksha, which we learned in the Hindu tradition, which remember was the release from samsara. The Buddha did something very fascinating. He expanded his sangha to women. Now, the story has it that he was reluctant to open the sangha to women, but one of his disciples convinced him that it was the right thing to do. This shows a kind of openness to other ideas from even his disciples, but also shows a kind of inclusiveness that the Buddha was open to. Now, the degree to which he was inclusive and the degree to which he thought that women could pursue the religious life through the Sangha is open for debate, and there's evidence that he was pessimistic about women in the Sangha, given that he was reluctant to allow them in for various reasons. I don't want to state them here, because I want to try to move beyond these issues. Buddhism does not apply to only males who are religious, but it applies to females, and that's how the tradition prevailed. I'll leave it to the viewer to go and do the research on this issue. Just want to note that the Buddha did, despite some reluctance, open the Sangha, the religious community, to females who really wanted to follow him. And so the Buddha, he taught a lot, and I've given the example of the flower sermon as one of the silent ways in which he spoke, but he spoke and taught the basic tenets of the Four Noble Truths until he died. And his famous last words were some such as these. I'm not going to quote the exact words, but I paraphrase, that one must work out one's salvation with diligence, one's own salvation with diligence. And we see that that the Buddha, he taught the four noble truths, including the Eightfold Path, and we see that Buddhism developed in various ways, and there's different kinds of Buddhism. Devotionally, there are different kinds of Buddhisms. Theologically, there's different kinds of Buddhisms, and some of those correspond with the different devotional kinds of Buddhism. And the most common split in the development of Buddhism, which would be the only one that I mention, is the split between what's called the Mahayana and the Theravada traditions. And the Theravada traditions take seriously the fact that the Buddha was but a man, and that the Buddha seemed to endorse an individualistic view according to which individuals need to work out their own salvation. They need to work out their pursuit of nirvana by themselves, by and large, without the help of the Buddha. The Buddha's no God to help them, and without the help of even the religious community to some degree. That individuals need to figure out how to live in such a way. They need to meditate in such a way. They need to follow the Eightfold Path in such a way that they can find release and have nirvana, or at least enter nirvana, the state that takes us out of our suffering. So here we find that there's an emphasis on the religious elites, if you will. The way to achieve nirvana is through living a strict religious life, where you focus on your nirvana, your attaining nirvana, and the Theravada tradition has a strict religious life in that way. And the Mahayana tradition, on the other hand, is one that is open to and teaches that nirvana can be achieved through helping others and being helped by others. That in many instances, it's better to forego your own nirvana to help another achieve nirvana. Like the Buddha. The Buddha forewent his own nirvana in order to teach the insights that he had learned through his meditation practices. And so the Mahayana tradition focuses on certain aspects of the biography of the Buddha to support its theology. The Theravada does as well. The last words of the Buddha, after all, were work out your salvation, your individual salvation, with diligence. Okay? So I don't mean to say one tradition is better than the other. One tradition is more supported by the life of the Buddha than the other. I'm just trying to provide some reasons for the difference in these traditions, the way in which Buddha split. So there's a Mahayana tradition. Mahayana oftentimes is translated as the large vessel, or the large boat, meaning that it's a boat that's capable of being filled with lots of people in it, as one works their way from a state of suffering to nirvana. And then the Theravada tradition is often connected with the tradition that's called Hinayana, but Hinayana is sometimes considered a disparaging term to describe the Theravada tradition. The Theravada tradition just means the elders, and so it's a kind of Buddhism that focuses on the teachings that were held by the elders that followed the Buddha in the particular kind of way in which they did. But the Hinayana means small vessel or small boat, which means that the boat that one takes to achieve nirvana is a small one that you take by yourself. The Mahayana is a larger boat. You can be helped by others on your way to nirvana. Okay, that concludes my discussion of Buddhism. Thank you very much for watching.